All right. That is synced.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of your favorite podcast. Actually, it's everyone's favorite podcast. Don't look that
second
up.
episode, we're already bigger than Joe Rogan.
Yeah, don't look that up. It's fact. You can just trust us. Just like you have to.
Because we are idiots.
Yeah, just like you have to just trust a
talk
lot
about
of the
things.
facts in the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is the most popular video on the Spirit Science YouTube channel. Which is called the Human History Movie. Is that what it's called?
Human History Movie 12.
12.
Yeah.
It's an hour long, and if you want to get the full effect of this episode, you might want to watch it on like 1.5 speed in the background.
God, yeah. Or two speed with subtitles can work, but
Yeah, you can also be doing something else while watching it. This video is a train wreck and a half, is basically what we're saying.
yeah,
and that's why we want to talk
very
about it.
difficult to follow sometimes. You can watch it in the background, but good luck because it's gonna make you kind of like look at it in like pure confusion because of what he says, and he also bounces back and forth between what he's talking about, different time frames, different fucking ideas. It's very difficult to follow, and it was very difficult to write stuff for this episode.
And very different supposedly scientific sources, which
Right, that you definitely shouldn't take seriously, but respect his authoritative tone.
Right. And okay, just to get this out of the way right off the bat, in the like first 2 to 3 minutes of the video, he says a lot of this stuff is like not proven by modern science. But this is what's been come to believe by many of like modern day philosophers. So just take everything I say with a grain of salt, and you don't have to believe any of it. And then for the rest of the video, he just presents everything as fact.
And not only he presents it as fact, he starts the video off, like Nate said, being like, none of this is actually all that proven. But then randomly you'll hear him either say one of two things. The thing I'm about to say is well known and accepted, but he gives no actual real information. It's very vague and doesn't give any sources. Or he says somebody like Hapgood, what the fuck's his full name? Charles Hapgood is like a scientist researcher when he's a hack. Just fucking professor, historian. Like, he's not a researcher. He's not an expert in anything they're talking about. But he's like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Or he says it has not become proven by modern science yet. As if that means fucking anything.
Yeah.
Like, he says that several times. That like really pissed me off. He's like, yet. I'm like, well, no,
As if
no,
the people like Edgar Casey who are just fucking like, who are just like using their brain, man. They're just understanding the universe. Eventually science will realize they're right, but right now they don't believe them.
Yeah, so the way we're kind of going to structure this is I'm going to try to talk about Edgar Casey and Drunvalo Melchizedek, a.k.a. What's his other name? Bernard Perona?
Oh, I didn't know he had another name.
Yeah, well, he changed his name several times, but we'll get into that later.
Oh, I wonder why.
So I think, Will, you're going to talk about like
right.
Atlantis and Lemuria, correct? Because that comes up several times in the video.
Yeah, we can start off with that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to start because I'm not sure this guy knew exactly how to start either. He talks about these two like supercontinents called Lemuria and Atlantis, and honestly, in the video when I first watched it, I couldn't tell what the fuck he was talking about, which one he was talking about at any point, and whether they were the same thing, different things, what time frame was going on. So when I was looking these things up, it's apparently Lemuria is the Pacific Ocean continent, although this guy seems to go back and forth between whether it's Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean,
Right.
or the Pacific Islands used to be it, or something like that. And then Atlantis, obviously, the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, and it's called Lemuria because it was originally used as a way to explain why there are so many animals across continents before continental drift
Right.
was. Yeah.
Exactly. Before tectonic plates. This was like the original idea for this was about the mid 19th century. So this was before tectonic plates. So people would be like, why the fuck are these fossils in two different, like in Madagascar and India, but not in Africa?
Right, before
So they
continental
proposed
drift
a land bridge.
Yeah. The land
Right.
bridge was Lemuria.
And so so it started out as a real scientific theory, and then very quickly they're like, oh no, this is dog shit. And they recognized what tectonic plates were, but then these people, the theosophists,
Yeah.
were like, nah, this is a thing. And it sank in the course of a very short period of time, because that makes sense.
And spiritual beings used to live here.
Oh, God. Not even just spiritual beings. I don't know how much you looked into it. So they claim that these were humans, but they call them root races.
Right.
So
yeah.
Lemuria was the third root race, and depending on where you're reading this shit, they talk about Lemuria existing millions of years ago, or maybe it was 700,000 years ago, and then certain thinkers in theosophy claim it was during the Eocene, but then they say that's 9 million years ago, which is untrue. The Eocene was 56 million years ago. That's when it started. So clearly they have no idea what they're fucking talking about.
Honestly,
So,
on both of our parts, it was just really hard to research because this information presented in the video, like we said, is presented as fact, but honestly, they don't even try to prove themselves with anything that like is connected to real science. So at least in my experience, I was like on a lot of forums, and it was just like firsthand experiences of these psychics in quotes.
yes.
And like it's a lot of just hearsay. So that's why
it's a lot
was
of
hard to
hearsay. It's a
research.
lot of people having personal revelations and kind of like discovering these things within their own minds. They're not actually like doing any science. So if it sounds like I'm jumping back and forth, I apologize. It was very difficult to read this stuff, and I didn't want to delve too far into it because nothing was really standardized. It was, like you said, just a bunch of just paragraphs of random shit.
Yeah.
But so the general timeline is that Lemuria was the first one, and that was in the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean, around those bits. Certain maps will have Europe and Africa completely submerged in water too, which is fucking insane.
Yeah.
And then that sank, and then Atlantis rose. And
Oh.
Lemuria had the third root race. Atlantis had the fourth root race, and he calls them like Nicals and shit in the video.
Yeah, and the Nicals,
But-
the Mayas, and the Atlanteans were all
Right, and the Atlanteans.
yeah.
And the Masters, the Ascended Masters, or something like that. Or
Oh,
maybe
God.
those were like the, yeah.
We don't have to get into that.
But one yikes thing I just wanted to mention real quick with the root race is the fifth root race is the modern one, and guess what it's called?
I don't know. He didn't talk about it.
He didn't talk about this. This is just a yikes thing I wanted to bring up. The fifth root race is called the Aryans.
Ooh, yikes. Well, okay, so that makes sense. That's in line with like Edgar Casey, because Edgar Casey was in a bunch of occult shit, and he read like occult books, and like that's how he supposedly made a lot of predictions. And oh boy. But yeah, so these five races were supposed to come into being like at the same time on the planet. And yeah, and then do you want to talk about the invasion?
The Martian invasion, that makes literally no sense.
Yeah.
He says it's something like 60,000 years ago. So first of all, a million years ago, Mars was inhabitable apparently, and there were Martians who were left-brained, and he says this is the male brain, which is another big yikes, and that humans were right-brained, female-brained, the emotional brain.
Some
And
gender studies,
a million years
science.
Yeah.
Gender, that's some yikesy stuff.
And the Martians did this thing called the Lucifer experiment, where they cut themselves off from reality or love, and became purely left-brained, and built these things called Merkabas, and destroyed Mars, and had to escape Mars.
Right.
And they decided to come to Earth 60,000 years ago. And then he goes into this weird rambling bit about how they invade Atlantis. The Atlanteans outnumber the Martians, so the Martians lose. But then he says the Martians won and took over, but then says they didn't take over, and then later says there was a truce, and it makes literally no sense.
That's so true. You know what? for some reason, and this is like a technique that I think that he's tapping into, that Melchizedek and Edgar Casey tap into, which is something in like psychic technique that's called hypnotic suggestion and confusing language to influence whoever is crazy enough to listen to him. Like high exaggeration, or like it's just mystical, whatever. Like it's so out there that you're like drawn into it, you know?
Right, and a lot of people nowadays, especially young people, really get into the spiritual stuff, and they just do not look into anything at all.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Another yikes thing I want to mention real quick. Like I said, I'm going to be jumping around a lot. I do apologize, but white people are considered the intellectually highest race in Theosophy, whereas the Indians, actual Indians, not Native Americans, the Indians are considered the spiritually highest race.
Oh man, what the heck?
So they do like pay credit to, in their eyes, sub people. And they act like they're praising them.
Racism.
But you can tell that they're really not, and this is just like super fascist shit. This is why a lot of people reacting to spirit science regularly equate this to like weird occult shit like that the Nazis liked, because this stuff very easily leads into like superiority complexes. Very easily. One of the things in the video, he never mentions it again. Like, he mentions it once and then kind of never really talks about it again, but space Hebrews, apparently the Jews came from space.
Yeah, he says it one time.
And then they come to Atlantis and then live with the Atlanteans, and then he's just like, all right, that's done. Not going to talk about that anymore. And like later justifies why he uses that to kind of justify why they would have been slaves, and like why they're like in Egypt, and why they're shit on it through history. So again, a lot of this is like, just seems like it's really easily leads to racism and fascism. It's kind of gross.
It's really gross, and I think that's kind of why we wanted to talk about it, just because like the overlap is so significant. And I don't know, it, like, on one hand you could consider believing in this shit like open-mindedness, but
right,
also
alt history, you know,
if this is something that you're latching onto because like there's a void within yourself, maybe don't do that, because that's kind of like cult shit.
If you're empty inside, don't turn to this. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the like sinking and rising and shit, and see if I can lead this into pole shifting and whatnot. So
I like the pole
Lemuria.
shifting.
Yeah. So Lemuria in Atlantis, well, it's like, so it is believable that obviously there were other islands and maybe other lands above sea, you know, a long time ago. But these people are, it's almost uncreative. It's almost kind of sad how uncreative they are, because when you see the maps drawn, if they're not the wackadoo shit maps of all of Africa being submerged, they pretty much draw these continents completely filling the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Like, they can't comprehend the fact that there are large oceans in this world, so they're like, no, there must have been continents in here, because they can't comprehend oceans for some fucking reason.
Or
and
continental drift,
even
maybe?
if you completely exactly, or even if you completely disregard that, yes, it is possible that there were other continents that sank because of tectonic plates and whatnot. That's clear. Or even with sea level rising, or storms can even wear away islands and submerge them. That is a real thing. But these people think that Lemuria and Atlantis sank in the course of days, years, 100 years, depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Entire continents just rising and falling. And one of his justifications is the coral thing, where, one, he just straight up lies, and he says that coral can't grow 150 feet deep in water, which is not true. It can grow like 300 feet deep and 150 feet deep for reefs. Or no, 60 to 90 feet deep for reefs. So he's wrong on both accounts.
I don't even remember
it
that
can
part of
both
the
grow
video.
deeper.
Is that
He uses it to justify Atlantis once being above ground. So this was Lemuria, sorry.
Okay.
He claims that this is evidence that Lemuria was above water, that coral was found 1,800 feet deep, which I can't find. I probably just didn't delve deep enough, but I can't find anything about Near Easter Islands, which is what he talked about,
Yeah.
coral being that deep. But he doesn't seem to comprehend the fact that tectonic plates will literally make things
Yeah.
rise and fall, like over the course of millions of years, granted, not hundreds of thousands, or that sea levels rise and fall. So the sea levels could have been lower, and then that's why coral was growing that deep. And he uses this as the sea level literally was going up and down
Right.
very quickly.
Yeah. And that's just one of the things that like is easily scientifically proven as a contradiction in this video.
Yes.
But like, don't forget that like there are a bunch of things without of science that he also contradicts himself in.
Yeah,
Like it's
often,
mind numbing.
very often. Like one of which the pineal gland used to be an eye.
Yeah. Or that like it shrank throughout evolution.
Oh
or, like,
God, it used to be a fucking third eye. I swear to God, I hate this man. So yeah, they talk about continents and whatnot rising and falling over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, or much smaller, hundreds of years, or a day. And he connects this to the poles shifting.
da-da-da.
And he both simultaneously clearly understands the difference between the rotational pole and the magnetic pole, because he mentions it, because he says that both affect each other, which we'll get into. But then he seems to constantly contradict himself and talks about the fact that the magnetic pole shifts regularly every like 200, 300,000 years,
Yeah.
which is true.
Yeah.
But he never really differentiates between that and the rotational pole.
Right.
And at one point,
And he also says the pole shift happened extremely quickly, which is
in a day,
yeah, which is not
in a day,
how that works.
and he says the rotational pole shifted, so he thinks Antarctica was where the North Pole is now, and that it flipped in a day.
Right.
Imagine if the Earth just did a 180 in a single day the other direction. Holy fuck!
He talks about as if the theory that the continents just float on the mantle, which has been disproven
Yes.
tens of times over, it actually happens.
Which is a Hapgood thing. Charles Hapgood. He cites Charles
Oh,
Hapgood
God,
on this,
right.
who is the hack who disputed tectonic plate theory.
Yeah.
But then also simultaneously, apparently, according to this guy, didn't look deep enough into Hapgood to know if it's true or not. Sorry, but he claims that Hapgood's theory was that all of the crust, they didn't just float. It's not that the continents floated. All of the crust is a one unified piece.
Right, yeah.
That'll just fucking spin
yeah, just
over the
spins over
fucking
the-
mantle any which direction. And then these magnetic pole shifts will happen, according to him, every 13,000 years, which is fucking false. He cites the fact that the magnetic poles were supposedly flipped 90 fucking degrees and we're in Hawaii. The North Pole is in Hawaii, which is not true. The only thing I could find is that there's a lot of iron underneath Hawaii, so there's a magnetic disturbance. That is it. So he claims that, but then claims that these magnetic poles will just fucking do 90-degree 180s, just fucking fly all over
At
the
the
place
snap of a
every
finger,
13,000 years over the course of a day.
Yeah.
Doesn't differentiate between rotational and non-rotational, and then magnetic poles. And then, according to him, the magnetic poles will flip, and then the crust that's just fucking freely spinning on the mantle will then align itself to the magnetic pole.
Yeah. Also,
Which doesn't make any fucking sense.
I can't remember what hieroglyphs he was talking about, but he did show something. He was like, there's a darkest day in history according to the Akashic Records or something, and there's 3 black days in this like basically comic strip looking fucking like hieroglyphic series of events. And this is when the poles disappear and the Earth's electromagnetic what's it called?
Field.
Thank you. Electromagnetic field just disappears. And if that were to happen for any amount of time, the sun's radiation
Yeah.
would just completely destroy everything on the face
Yeah.
of the Earth. Like,
It would rip the atmosphere away
Yeah.
instantly.
nothing would still be.
he-
we would turn into Mars.
Exactly. Which he kind of like, yeah, he makes these weird fucking conflations. But to bring in some accuracy to this,
Thank you. We need some of that.
he talks about the electromagnetic null zone, which is not a thing. He claims that when the magnetic poles are shifting, we lose the magnetic field, which is not fucking true.
Bom, bom, bom.
It weakens it, so we have slightly stronger solar radiation, but all that does is increase the aurora.
Yeah.
And the shortest magnetic pole shift that we've found was 200 years long. And the
That's
last
pretty
one
fast, though.
was 200,000 years long.
That's more. Yeah, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no null zone. Nothing's it just. And we are going through one right now. It's been a long time. We are currently, they believe, going through the beginning of a pole shift. But the shortest it'll be is a couple hundred years, which isn't really going to affect us all that much.
Right.
We can accommodate that. And if it's over 100,000 years, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
So this guy is clearly a wacko, spiritual guy. And with all of those types of people, they really like end of the world scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And this video was put out on February 1st, 2012, right before, all the shit
predictions
with the end of the world. All of it, and after 2012, he deleted all of his previous before 2012 videos and re-uploaded them, edited.
Yeah.
I wonder why. And in this video, he mentions the Bermuda Triangle being an old Merkaba that's going to reset soon, according to him. Don't just trust him. Mm-hmm. And
according to Edgar
he
Casey,
says there's going to be consequences.
Yeah, the Bermuda Triangle's part of a Merkaba. Okay, so he talks about the Earth's Kundalini point being in Tibet or something. God. And then he says it shifts to somewhere else, and then he says we'll get to that later, but then he never gets to it later.
Never gets to it.
So what the fuck?
Oh, he does
dude?
that a lot. Yeah, you can't leave us hanging like that.
And if you don't know, a Merkaba is basically just like a connection of all your chakra points. So you can take or leave whatever you want from that. I mean, there's some.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah.
If we fail to explain some things, we apologize. But Merkaba is the stupid and it's represented in this video often with the Star of David for some fucking reason.
Oh, all the time. I mean,
again connected to the space Hebrews that never are mentioned again.
Yeah, that's the only way they know how to represent it, because the only fucking descriptions they have of it is hearsay from these wackos that are just charlatans that say shit for money. They're like, I'm gonna say a bunch of mystical shit that sounds cool and people are gonna believe me because there's no way to refute it, because there's no way to prove it. So then there's no way to disprove it.
And did you love the part where he was like, Edgar Casey predicted that pole shifts happened, and at first geologists were like, no, that can't be possible. And then they realized he was right, and they started taking him seriously. One thing I want to say is, at one point, another just example of how this guy knows nothing of what he's fucking talking about is that when he's talking about the pole shifts, again, never specifying what the fuck he means, whether he means rotational or magnetic, he shows an image of the precession of the equinoxes, which he already talked about earlier, so he clearly knows what the fuck those are. I
forgot about that.
Where the fucking axis will do a little, if you spin a
gyroscope.
God damn it, what was it called? Like a gyroscope or whatever. Why am I blanking? Just those toy spinner things. Fucking what am I?
The gyroscope.
Not gyroscopes. They're I fucking.
A top?
Wow, I sound like an idiot.
A top?
I'm just having a brain fart. A top thing on a table, and it'll spin. But then also its axis of what it's spinning will do this slight rotation thing. So that's the precession of the equinoxes. He knows what these are because he mentioned the Sumerians earlier knowing what they are. And then later shows an image of this talking about a very vague pole shift, not specifying what he means. So I genuinely can't tell if he knows the difference between anything he's fucking saying. I cannot tell.
It just seemed like he kind of took a bunch of stuff that he heard that he thought was cool and tried to put it into a narrative format, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, at all. He calls this a fucking movie. It's not a fucking movie.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's other stuff that I'll remember that I want to talk about later with that stuff. But yeah, we can get into the Edgar Casey stuff because I want to hear more about that.
Okay, actually, I think it'll be easier to start with Bernard Perona just because he's a little bit easier to disprove his frauds. There are way more firsthand accounts of just being yeah, this man doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So Drunvalo Melchizedek is this guy who is cited a lot in the Spirit Signs video, who claims to channel Thoth, which is an Egyptian god that brought them knowledge and writing and shit.
Which in the video he never fucking specifies really what Thoth is, if he's a Naqal, or maybe I can't remember, but am I wrong? He never specifies really even what the fuck Thoth is.
He just says he's a spiritual being of the fourth dimensional spiritual being or whatever the fuck. Doesn't make sense.
But kind of a human and not a human.
It's just a lot of contradictions.
Maybe a space
as to
Hebrew,
what,
who knows?
Thoth is. Originally his name was Bernard Perona, like I said, And then he changes his name to Akbar, which there's a first.
Oh.
There's a first.
Wait, where's he from first? Where's he from?
Shit. He's from Alameda, California, born in 1941.
Oh, God.
He's still alive at the age of 79.
God.
He claims that
He's a Californian who changed his name to Akbar?
Yeah, so he claims that in 1971, I think, like the year after he got his Bachelor of Fine Arts from Berkeley, he's
one of the boys.
He claims that he took poison and his previous persona dies and it was replaced by Akbar. He tells this is from a first-hand account from his nephew. So yeah, he becomes Akbar, and then he writes a book or something, The Secret of the Flower of Life, and that's like his basis for starting this, what I think is a cult, because he just uses it to like siphon money from his followers.
As always.
Yeah, and I don't know. A lot of the other first-hand accounts are just like, this guy won't even talk to you unless, you offer him money first, which is, I think, just an initial red flag. There was also another account where someone was like, I wanted to see him like materialize things in his right palm because he was teaching his students through meditation you could materialize whatever you wanted to in the palm of your hand. And when he asked him to show him, he backed out of it in like a very, nervous way. And he was like, I can't show that to you. And he was probably asking for money or something. He's like, you need to build up.
My brain can't do it without $50 right now.
You need to build up through the ranks. This is like some sort of Scientology bullshit. And then later on in 1992, I think he changed his name legally to Drunvalo Melchizedek, which is the guy we know to channel Thoth for these spirit science videos. He also talks a lot about sacred geometry, and you can see that in the spirit science video they talk about like Fibonacci spirals on the surface of Mars, and like the reason a lot of
golden ratios or stuff like that.
Like golden ratios and architecture for like ancient civilizations. But in another video that I watched, the Fibonacci spiral isn't used to like prove that things are spiritual or like,
it's just a natural thing. It appears fucking everywhere.
Right. It's natural. It's not something that, fucking you build to make a Merkaba. I don't know.
To enhance your soul.
Here's a main criticism for his sacred geometry on Wikipedia, which is unfortunately where I got most of my information, considering that a lot of the other places talking about Melchizedek were just like first-hand account forums and like people complaining about him.
Was there anything on Theosophy Wiki?
I didn't check it. There is mentions of Theosophy.
I looked at that for the Blavatsky shit.
That's about like the Akashic record and shit. A lot of that Theosophy stuff. But this mathematician says his sacred geometry is not geometry. There's a great deal more to geometry than just drawing some pretty shapes and patterns. Things like the flower of life are absolutely aesthetically pleasing, but they are next to useless in terms of mathematics. Nor will it appear in any modern geometry textbook because despite how pretty it looks, the flower of life is mathematically boring. So, like, he wasn't...
Yes. Yeah.
He wasn't using any real math. He was just like using numbers to look cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh yeah.
Also, huge red flag.
They use people's ignorance to be like, "Hey, look at this thing. It's very pretty, and I'm just going to tell you that it's mathematically important, and you're going to believe me because you don't know anything about this."
Right. So the mathematician
entranced you into a cult.
Also pointed out errors in Melchizedek's definitions of transcendental numbers, sine waves, and golden spirals, otherwise known as the Fibonacci spiral, and calls out the use of various geometrical tautologies as meaningful and a number of unsubstantiated number theories. So it's basically just number theories.
Unsubstantiated,
Here it is. The Seed of Life Institute was his cult that he has since distanced himself from. And the last thing I'll say to disprove Melchizedek is that a lot of other who I think are charlatans in the spiritual world like to put other charlatans down so that they seem more credible. And two of them are Dan Winters and David Icke, I think. They both say that Melchizedek is a piece of shit, garbage who's just spouting nonsense so that they look better. And like whenever that happens, that's like a third red flag, I think.
A little bit. Although I'd say there's enough red flags before this for any sane person to go, hey, maybe he's full of shit. And the fact that the spirit science guy just accepts these, like, again, he claims that he's just presenting alt information,
right,
and that you shouldn't take it seriously unless you're interested and look into it for yourself. But he's clearly, especially based on the rest of his videos, convinced, very convinced of a lot of this stuff.
And he's trying to convince others, and it's just kind of sickening. And that's why we wanted to talk about it.
It's very sickening and funny. It's very funny. I recommend watching this video with some friends and some drinks.
Yeah, after a few drinks, you definitely
you'll have
need
a good time. Yeah, even if you don't know anything about what he's talking about and you can't disprove it, like you can't like watch it and be like, hey, this is absolutely wrong. It's still fun as hell to watch because he says some wacky ass shit, especially when he starts getting to like Egyptian shit and the pyramids and the fucking soul spaceship that lands on top of the pyramid.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh my god. Okay, I kind of wanted to talk about that, but we'll leave that part because it's kind of like a narrative thing that's just insane. The one thing,
hopefully remember to bring it back up.
Yeah, the one phrase that I did want to say that I literally had to pause the video while watching is he said, I'm going to pause for dramatic effect. Tantric interdimensional sex.
in my notes at the top, I just in all caps I have tantric interdimensional sex meditations.
Like as soon as he says that, you're just like, okay, this is yep.
What the fuck? But that's how he claims that's how the Nicalls, like the Nicalls would die and come back to life, and they would use tantric interdimensional sex meditations for like giving their old memories back to themselves, and like this is how they would perpetuate their like eternal memories and shit.
And then later in the video, in like a
and then just drops it. He just says it, and then he's done. It just fucking doesn't touch that again.
And later in the video, he says, and you might remember that Mary was a virgin, but her and Joseph had tantric interdimensional sex, so that Jesus could be born. So Mary was technically physically a virgin.
Yeah.
God, this.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is very much like the middle school, fucking high school. You don't want to be Christian anymore, but you still need something in your life for foundation, and you don't know what to turn to. So you turn to this thing that just takes random shit from all of the religions and just shoves them together in no coherent form.
Right. That's theosophy.
And then you're just like, yeah, I'm spiritual. Yeah, I'm a spiritual person.
I think that's just like theosophy embodied, basically.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But it's funny because this shit happened in the fucking mid-19th century.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't modern.
So I guess that's a good place to start talking about Edgar Cayce, who is also cited as a reputable source a lot in this spirit science video because he's a known like channeler and psychic. He's known as
spirit science loves Cayce.
Yeah, he's talking about like the sleeping psychic, which is Edgar Cayce.
He wants to have interdimensional sex meditations with him. Sorry, continue.
Edgar Cayce was born in 1877, and he died in 1945. He's the sleeping prophet, father of holistic medicine. He amassed a record of 14,000 clairvoyant readings. And you know what? Like, his stuff is a little harder to disprove sometimes. But, you know, if you just look into it a little, you can see a lot of like the reasonings for his predictions, I guess, or like diagnoses, which is what he was famous for. And like with 14,000 readings, I like to think of the phrase,
how do you even do that?
Yeah, I like to think of the phrase, even a stopped clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, right.
So, like,
exactly. Yeah. And we're only focusing on what these fucking psychos get right, just like psychics, you know?
And, okay, so he had a kind of weird upbringing. I think I remember reading somewhere that he only completed school up to, like, 8th or 9th grade. He also claimed to absorb the knowledge of books by sleeping on them. So he would put books...
Hey, you know what they say about the most successful people? They never finish school.
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't even think Cayce got that rich. I think he was kind of...
Wait, I missed what you just said. Did you say he attained knowledge by sleeping on top of books? Is that what you said?
Through osmosis. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah. Also, he claimed that when he was like 13 or something, he was playing in the woods and saw an angel with big wings, and it said, "Once you become a missionary, your life dreams will be fulfilled," or something.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So, but he was another huge proponent of Atlantis and Lemuria. He believed in like astrology and reincarnation and would preach about that a lot in his readings. But a few of his like most notable friends were Harry Houdini and like a lot of famous people. Like he gave readings to Rockefeller, which I thought was really strange. And it also said he gave readings to like other oil barons, because this is notable, at least to me, because it said he helped oil barons gain their fortune. But in the Spirit Science video, they say that the Earth is currently ruled by 13 insanely rich families, most of which...
Oh my God, yeah.
Most of which are oil barons. So, like, how...
And some of them are Jewish.
Yeah. And so...
It's very fascist.
It's super fascist. So how are you about to claim that these evil 13 families are like ruling over the planet, and then you're claiming that a lot of the stuff that Edgar Cayce said was like true and holistic and like good mostly, but he helped these people get evil, basically.
Yeah.
So
right.
Okay.
Well, can you really expect anything from this guy? He makes this rambly video that's so hard to follow, and you expect his brain to be any better?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of what he thought that people like praise Cayce for is his like preaching of, you know, getting rest and relaxation if you're feeling sick, and like eating healthily and like getting enough exercise, which is like,
it doesn't take much to promote like decently healthy habits.
Right. And like he was also friends with a back doctor or something, or like a backbone doctor.
A back doctor?
Yeah, and this was really funny because a lot of his like...
Oh, with the Kundalini and shit?
Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, that's what they talked about, the spines of Kundalini.
But a lot of his early diagnoses, when this doctor would like sit in on his readings, were for spinal lesions. I wonder fucking why, man. It's so that he could just send him to this doctor to get cured. Cured in quotations. Like,
wait, I'm confused. So he had a friend that was a back doctor who would be with him during readings on other people.
Yeah, to like diagnose
and what was
them.
like happening. Like, so Cayce would what? He would like read these people and then pretend that he was coming up with the doctor's diagnoses?
Yes.
Or like, what was the relationship here?
Well, he would just make up a diagnosis that would benefit his doctor friend, basically. And a
so he would.
a lot of the time it was
he would just
spinal
lie.
lesions. Yeah.
Oh, fuck. So he would read these people, lie, say you have a spinal lesion, and send them into a surgery that isn't doing anything.
And that's why he was friends with so many doctors.
Oh.
So he would do this not only with this spinal doctor, he would do it with a bunch of other doctors. He was also like claimed to give like recommendations to take shit that is now known as poison. Strychnia is one of them, which is just a straight up poison.
Jesus.
To like cure shit. This other guy, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he went into Edgar Cayce all like excited, and then once he misdiagnosed his daughter, he was like, okay, this guy's a fucking quack.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other criticisms of Cayce is that he couldn't even save his own son or his uncle or something. I don't know. I don't know. But like, that's kind of harsh, but honestly, like, if you're about to make all these claims...
with how much... If he was that much of a hack, a lot of people will, like, always be like, oh, don't be, like, that mean, or don't, like, fucking, you know, demean somebody in that kind of, like, in certain ways. But it's like, at a certain point with certain types of human beings, I don't give a shit anymore.
Right.
Like, as long as I'm not demeaning your family who are innocent, like, I don't give a... If you're a bad fucking person, absolutely, I will shit on you.
If you're interested in knowing more about Edgar Cayce's hackish nature, you should look into James Randi. He's a pretty well-read guy who finds joy in like being in that beard and debunking a lot of these psychics. But
finds joy in being a neckbeard. Nice.
Which I guess is what we're doing right now, but it's fun.
I mean, hey.
I think the only thing I remember reading about Casey is that he predicted the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, but what did he predict the contents, or did he just predict that we would find something that would have old information on it? Because you could just say that at any point in time,
I think it was the
and it will come
contents,
true.
though. I'm pretty sure it was some of the contents, which is what I'm like.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's like the one thing. A lot of the other stuff is just like easily predictable shit.
So maybe he's a little bit psychic.
Yeah, maybe. A lot of it is just like easily predictable shit if you're like just a little bit in the know about like world events and politics and shit. Because he's like credited with he's credited with predicting World War II in 1935, which is technically like 2 or 3 years after World War II started, if I'm remembering correctly.
I genuinely can't remember the exact date.
Didn't Hitler start rising to power in like 1933?
Yeah, but I mean, World War II didn't start right then, but he definitely, that was when he began.
Right, so if you can see that that's
getting
happening,
into power,
you can predict easily that there's going to be a world war. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people were probably predicting it. Yeah,
and I don't know. It's just a lot of similar stuff like that. The list is very long, as he had 14,000 readings, but I just thought those are some of the most interesting and important ones. But I can list all of my sources, in the description of this episode.
I didn't really have sources. I just kind of like looked. It was the stuff I was looking at was so easily falsifiable that I just kind of looked into it and was like, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. My stuff's just talking about how stupid this is.
And again, like
how easily unscientific
a lot
it is.
of my sources too are Wikipedia pages and like forums that are just talking about these people.
Right.
It's
I do recommend looking a lot of this stuff up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is actually pretty good now, and I also recommending reading some Theosophy Wiki articles because they, one, don't cite half the shit they write, and two, it's very funny how authoritative they act and how
like
they
the video.
Talk about their people differently.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, Hapgood was an expert on blah blah blah, and he was a wonderful scientist. Or Blavatsky, she was I think Blavatsky was not an ascended master, but like something, just like one of these psychic people, I think, that would just like have premonitions and talk about this stuff, and then they would write it down and act like it was actually.
Yeah, he's like
scientific.
listed as the top guy for the Akashic record, which is another thing that the spirit science guy references a lot. It hasn't been written down, and it is just a floating ethereal
One thing. Oh, God, absolutely. That's half the shit. One thing I could not find, and I probably just didn't look deep enough, granted, I am also 99% certain he was just talking out of his ass, is he talked about these green tablets and then said they were made of indestructible material. Like,
wait,
atomically indestructible.
Are these the tablets that rise up from in between the Sphinx's arms?
Yes, yeah. So I don't know if that can lead into you talking about that one dude, but I can't find anything on it, and it like, what? What the fuck is this? They're atomically unchangeable, I think is what he called them.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Or something like that. This is one of those aggravating points where I'm just like, that most of it's funny, but that kind of shit is like, you were just genuinely dumb.
Yeah. Like I said, like, this is the most frustrating part of watching this video is just the manner in which he presents this information, because he's so take this at your own, discretion, and like think of this how you may, but then he's like, this is how it is immediately after.
This happened. You can't dispute this. He literally says a lot of the times. A decent chunk of what he says, this is a fact. Scientists already understand this and agree with this.
Yeah.
And he'll say some wild shit.
Yeah, he basically uses like semantics to try to prove a lot of what he was saying.
Oh God, yes.
He cites scientific sources, but then just completely puts words in their mouth, very obviously.
Oh, abso-fucking-lutely, yeah. Anybody he cites that's actually a scientist, he completely misrepresents them. There's one thing I want to mention really quickly that's just fucking stupid, and then I don't know if you have much on the pyramid tunnel guy. But I want to talk about that.
I don't really, unfortunately.
Damn. Okay. Well, one thing that he gets into with this is he starts talking about different levels of humanity and different levels of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And he connects them to chromosomes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. And the giants and shit, yeah.
And giants and shit. So quick overview. He says that humans currently are at level 2 is what he says. And that's linked to us having 44 chromosomes and then the 2 extra, so 46 chromosomes in total. And then he says there's 5 levels. They go beyond that, but there's 5 main levels. Level 1, 42 and 2 chromosomes. Level 2, us, 44 and 2, and then 46 and 2, and then 48 and 2, and 40, and then 50 and 2. Right. And they correspond to 4 to 6 feet at 1, 5 to 7 at 2, then 10 to 16, then 30 to 35, then 50 to 60 feet. Humans.
Right.
But what's funny is he so heavily keeps linking these to chromosomes for some fucking reason. And also uses completely arbitrary, I don't know if you remember, uses completely arbitrary drawings of humans and like uses the Da Vinci fucking drawing and then some like random really shitty modern fucking drawing of the same thing. It's actually hilarious. But
I didn't even see that.
One thing I don't understand about this chromosome thing is I don't think he realizes that gorillas have 48 chromosomes, 46 and 2. And that our common ancestor with gorillas also had 48 chromosomes, 46 and 2. And one of our chromosomes, or well, it's all pairs, so
Right.
2 of our chromosomes was literally because one of our chromosomes. You can edit this. I
Yeah,
sound
no,
like a
it's-
fucking
it's
idiot.
cool.
Sorry. Our common ancestor had chromosomes that fused, and that's why we have less than our cousins, the gorillas. So were gorillas a higher level of consciousness than us?
Yeah, dude.
I don't understand.
Maybe that's what he's trying to say. I don't know. While we're on the theory of like this consciousness shit with DNA, I guess we can kind of talk about Akhenaten, if you want to.
One quick thing before we get into that, and I do want to get into that, is he talks about all this chromosome stuff, and then he talks about Egyptian statues, and he's like, a lot of Egyptologists and experts think that the Egypt statues were big because they wanted to display prominence and power.
Uh-huh.
And then he's just like, nah, Egyptians were just
They
big.
were actually that big. Hey, that would explain why they can move the blocks of the pyramid so easily.
The stones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like-
And then doesn't he talk about how Edgar Cayce didn't predict, but like had a vision that the pyramids were built top down?
Oh my God, I don't
Like were
even
built
wanna-
from the
I
peak
don't-
down to the
I don't want
base.
to talk about that.
Like
I don't want to talk about that. That made
like a
me
floating
very mad.
fucking peak, and then it just fucking.
Fuck.
All right, so yeah, let's get into
Completely
Akhenaten.
glossing over
Um,
the fact that physics just doesn't even allow organisms to be that big with the Earth's
No,
gravity.
literally, yeah.
Like, dinosaurs could only get so big for a reason, because if they got any bigger,
Yeah.
they would just collapse under their own weight. Like,
Yeah, literally. What is it called? The what the fuck is that called? When you double something's surface area, you're
Yep.
like quadrupling its
Yeah.
its volume.
Inverse square law or
So it's
something.
like yeah. So we literally can't get that big. Our bodies would like that's why when whales are beached, they fucking implode.
even a fucking modern day anime, Attack on Titan, is able to explain this away by saying that the Titans' bodies are less dense than humans. They say that in the first few episodes. They're like, yeah, they're allowed to be this big.
Holy fuck. Modern anime debunks spirit science.
Like they fucking explain that shit in a fucking anime, dude.
Goddamn.
All right.
Yeah, that's so fucking funny.
And then on the he also says that Akhenaten, which is the first technical pharaoh of Egypt who tries to make a monotheism, whatever, blah blah blah. He's like the
Right.
third level of consciousness and is 16 feet tall or whatever. Oh yeah, he also talks about his alien elongated skull features and whatever. And we can talk about ancient alien theory again if you want to, but
I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with this. So
but I was just at the Cleveland Museum of Art, which has some art of Akhenaten, and in the descriptions of the plaques and hieroglyphs, it just says a lot of his features were exaggerated, including his height, because he wanted to stand out from the rest of the drawings. Obviously.
yeah.
And also, he was inbred as fuck. So he probably looked a little weird.
Yeah.
That's why
He probably looked a little fucking
Yeah,
weird.
that's why Tutankhamun, his
Hey, maybe
son-
inbreeding is linked to higher consciousness.
Maybe you gotta do some interdimensional tantric sex to inbreed and make...
Like medication. you gotta do some tantric interdimensional sex meditations with your sister.
That's how you get another Akhenaten and Tutankhamun.
Exactly. Or did you love how Thoth apparently brought fucking Pythagoras to Egypt? Like, in he was like, Pythagoras founded Greece. What Pythagoras is he fucking talking about? What? And I'm pretty sure he's talking about the Pythagoras we're thinking of, because he talks about how Pythagoras, like, knew math above, like, anybody, like, had a higher level of consciousness for math. And it's like, this dude is so stupid.
And, like, okay, the last thing I want to talk about before we can hopefully end this is the fucking spaceship underneath the pyramids.
Oh my fucking
that
god!
Saves the planet from the gray aliens, and apparently
And how the last person to fly it was from Peru, and she like.
And if you can fly the spaceship, that means you can upgrade your consciousness to fourth dimension, which is another thing. He talks about dimensions as like completely separate things from how we should understand them with science. Like,
yeah,
man, what can you even say? Dimensions are not
alternate realities. They're not
other
people
universes.
Constantly think of. Yeah, but he regularly conflates dimensions with alternate realities, but then also what he calls like higher levels of consciousness, which he doesn't explain. He doesn't like understand dimensions as what they are, where it's just another physical dimension that we can't perceive, just like a two-dimensional being couldn't perceive the third dimension. Right. He talks about them as if they're alternate realities and higher levels of consciousness, and
he goes back and forth.
Yeah, and even when he talks about like the second dimension, it's so granted, I guess you shouldn't take it seriously. He's using dimensions completely incorrectly, but he never actually uses it in the way that you or I would think of dimensions. So we can't take him seriously in using that word. But anyway, yeah, this fucking spirit
spaceship.
So
the spaceship is like supposedly a defense mechanism for Earth when it's under attack by like lower dimensional beings or whatever. And the last time it was used was like 1989 when some indigenous lady from like South America hacked into it or whatever and flew it. And when you can fly the spaceship, that means like you can tap into the highest amount of spirit power, and basically everything that you wish becomes true. So her only wish, the only thing that she decided to fix in the myriad problems the world faces, is to get rid of the gray alien problem. Which
oh my fucking god, which can lead into another episode. We can do Bob Lazar next.
Yeah. Okay.
All
right, let's do it.
Look at us, we've got a through line.
But like, seriously, if that's the one thing that you're gonna fix when you can literally do anything you want in this spaceship,
anything, you could solve any issue, and she solved the fucking gray alien. Why?
She's like, I don't want people to stop
like,
getting
what did she do?
Anymore.
No, what was it again? She gave them headaches. Was that what it was?
They started puking, and they were like, we got to get out of here.
And they started puking, so they left. So they're like, well, no, we can't handle this. We got to bounce. Oh, my fucking God. And not only, so, yeah, there's a giant disc, which is, I believe he said,
the dimensions are
3
insane.
atoms thick.
Doesn't make any sense.
3 atoms thick. That is both physical and not physical, because it's below the pyramids, but actually isn't made up of anything. I don't know what that means. So the third Great Pyramid, Khafre's Pyramid, doesn't have the capstone on it. He both simultaneously talks about the fact that the capstone, one, is tiny. He says it's like 8 inches wide
5
or something
inches
like
tall.
that. Which is the missing capstone's fucking massive. And then he
it's
simultaneously says there is a capstone
Haven't you ever seen
below the pyramid. James Cameron already knew this. But there's simultaneously an actual capstone buried beneath the pyramids, but then also it doesn't matter because there's not supposed to be a capstone, because you're supposed to fly the spaceship and land it on top of the flat top of the pyramid, which then creates what he keeps saying is the Greek symbol for phi. And he keeps showing the phi next to the pyramid with the disc on top of the pyramid, and he overlays them as if it makes any sense, but it doesn't.
Dude. It's a square and a circle. That's not phi, man.
Right. How does a square-based pyramid in a fucking disc make phi, which is a circle with a vertical line through it? This doesn't make any fucking sense.
He loves not making sense, I'm convinced.
He just says, like you said, he just reads these things that he's like, oh, that's cool, and then he just says them without ever fucking understanding them.
What are some of the other things that we glossed over that might be worth watching the video for?
Well, there's one thing that I maybe just on my own time will look into. I don't know if it's possible. The tunnel shit. That there is a tunnel from Romania.
With the city underneath?
With the city underneath, which is not a city, a big building, but it's a city, and I'm going to keep calling it a city and representing it as a city, but I keep saying, no, it's not a city, because I don't want to make any sense.
That Paramount was supposed to film for $1 million.
But didn't, because of the Egyptian government wanted more money.
Yeah, fuck that shit.
There's apparently a city below the pyramids, a gigantic city, and a tunnel from Romania to Egypt.
I just want to...
A tunnel, a singular fucking tunnel.
Let's just slow down for a little bit.
In a wall of light. Like, they found... What?
Let's just slow down and, like... We sound crazy right now because this guy sounds fucking crazy. And it's making us crazy.
And it's so... Yeah, it's really hard not to... This is what happened when a couple friends and I were watching this with some drinks. We weren't even watching. We were watching somebody, like, reacting to it, which made me want to watch the original
thing. Was that the Armored Skeptic
video? No, it was a Vosh video.
Okay.
For anybody who watches Vosh, we were watching that and we kept pausing it. Like we couldn't help but just continually pause it and go no, and just scream at the TV.
Drinks spilling everywhere.
Like for shit like this, like it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it is fun, but just beware. It will aggravate you, even if you don't actively know a whole bunch of stuff about this. Honestly, it'll be more fun if you don't know about it because it's so crazy.
Right.
The more you know about it, the less fun it gets because it just gets maddening.
Yeah.
You're just angry.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much else.
It's super inconsistent. It's hard to watch. He never explains what he's talking about. He never references anything. He'll talk about something that he claims happened 50,000 years ago and then suddenly switches to something he's talking about 13,000 years ago. Where he's getting these dates from, I have no idea because everything I fucking searched up was referencing millions of years ago or hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Right.
So I genuinely don't know where he's getting any of this information from.
Right, and when you're looking to information from psychic channelers and presenting it as fact, it's just so easy to contradict yourself because these channelers contradict each other on purpose sometimes.
Yep.
So
yeah, right. It's the cult thing where when you're making a cult, you're almost trying to weed out the people who can catch your inconsistencies. You want the people dumb enough to not fall for your inconsistencies, and then you want to throw somebody's mind through so many loops that they begin to break down and stop caring about inconsistencies.
Right.
And that's how you brainwash people into believing this cult shit or this weird spiritual shit that makes literally no sense just because you want something to believe in. There's so much cool shit in the world. Like when we were talking last episode about all the like fringe alt stuff, it's kind of wacky, but it's not that wacky. If you want to look into crazy shit, there is so much real, genuine stuff with evidence to look into that's insane. You don't need to believe this stuff from fucking fake psychics. Whatever you believe about spirituality and the existence of spirits and psychics and whatnot, I think everybody can agree these people are hacks and they're just fucking cult leaders trying to make money and create a following. And it's really sad.
Yeah, and it's even more sad that Edgar Cayce wasn't even rich and didn't even have a cult. Or at least he wasn't outwardly rich. He might have been secretly rich.
Right.
Maybe he was genuinely trying to help people, but sometimes I'm not so sure, you know? I think that's all we have to talk about, though. So.
Oh yeah, I know of what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called.
I just really like this part
all
that
right.
I
do you want to
of Will's?
Ugh.
Yeah.
Do you want to do like a talked out outro thing or
no? That's what we're doing right now.
Or do you think we kind of did that already? I mean, we kind of did like do a wrap up.
No, we're doing that right now. Is the talked out intro? Basically,
right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, y'all.
Yeah, we're just going to tell people thanks for listening to Two Idiots Talk, where we just talked about spirit science.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right. You want to stop recording now or?